On certain October nights, I like to pass along a tale I first heard from an old librarian who smelt faintly of nutmeg and dust jackets. She told it to me at closing time, when the tall windows held the last blue of evening and the clock forgot to tick for a moment. She called it The Lantern at Elm Bend, and she said it had a way of finding the right ears. It begins in a crooked street where the map surrenders and the houses lean together like old friends whispering. On Halloween, that bend in the road gathers fog as if it were a shawl. Porch lights bloom, pumpkins watch with pleasant triangular faces. A black cat, bored of pretending to be unlucky, sits on a fence and hums to itself. There was a boy once, Jonah, who preferred capes to coats and made wishes on manhole steam. He was not brave, though he pretended nicely. That year a wind came early and pressed the leaves flat, and something about the evening felt like a held breath. Jonah's pockets were heavy with the usual treasures of childhood, and the not-so-usual stones he had collected on purpose. He kept them because he liked their names. Later, tomorrow, not yet. He said they were lucky. He said lots of things that kept one foot tied to the step. At Elm Bend, where the fog pooled, a lantern floated at shoulder height, and then wasn't there, and then was again, as if the night itself were winking. Jonah craned his neck and noticed the lantern was not floating at all. It was held by a person with a kind of stillness you only learn from long practice. Like a lake that has made peace with the wind. The face behind the light was lined the way pumpkins are, all friendly folds. "You're out late," said the lantern holder, conversational as a kettle beginning to sing. "It's Halloween," said Jonah, because children are philosophers who disguise themselves as literalists. "Indeed," said the lantern, or perhaps the person. "Best night for crossings." Jonah wanted to ask what sort of crossings. He settled for looking at the glow. It had that quality candlelight has when it remembers being starlight first. The stranger tilted the lantern and the fog stepped back a little. "If you have time," they said, "I will tell you what my father told me when I carried stones in my pockets, just as you do." Stories travel in clever ways, sliding into spaces between thoughts. So Jonah listened, and if the cat moved closer, no one commented. The stranger's father had worked the river at Fog Lake, the one that pretends it is a silver road under the moon and a stubborn wall under the sun. On nights when laughter carried easily, the ferryman rowed those who needed crossing. He charged no coin. The price was a small decision placed in the boat, like an offering. People thought it was a trick until they tried. One night a man climbed in, pockets clinking with his own secret stones. Maybe the words on his stones were similar to Jonah's. Maybe they were different. The ferryman tapped the gunwale. "Light craft travel easiest," he said. The man nodded, refused to understand, and the boat sighed. Halfway across, the oars grew heavy. The ferryman set them down. "Look," he said, not unkindly, and dipped a hand into the man's pocket. He drew up a small, smooth, flat pebble. It tasted of old promises and tea gone cold. The ferryman smiled as if reading was simple. "Someday," he said. "Strong little word. Loves to pretend it helps." The man held the pebble as if it could bite. The river flicked a chill finger at his ankle. "I cannot throw it out," he said. "I have carried it for such a long time." "You need not throw anything," said the ferryman. "The river knows what to keep." He held the pebble over the side and the current reached up like a friend you have not yet met. It took the weight gently and the boat rose a fraction, almost not at all, yet enough that the water changed its mind about resistance. The man blinked. He touched his pockets. Lighter, wider, breath appeared where there had been tightness. He looked up. The far bank had drifted nearer as if embarrassed to have been so, and found an oar instead. The ferryman, content to be unnecessary, watched the man row the rest of the way with a face that said, "We are all learning to set things down." On the shore, the man placed a small mark on a post, just a fingertip of soot, to remember how small things alter big waters. And the soot mark stayed, and others found it, and found it again when they needed. The stranger at Elm Bend paused, and the fog arranged itself as if to listen more closely. Jonah tried to see the river behind the words. He could feel a weight in his pockets, regard the night with new interest. "When I was your size," the stranger said, "I met a carver who kept late hours. She cut pumpkins in her back room with a blade that knew exactly what to reveal. People brought ordinary gourds, all shy and solid, and she made windows in them for light to find its way out. I asked her if she cut faces. She said, 'Oh no, dear, I uncover the lantern that was hiding.' She showed me the bowl of pale strings and seeds, all the mess we pull out to make room. She said the seeds were the clever bit. If you save a few and plant them, you get another harvest. Not of mess, but of lanterns." The carver taught the stranger a simple way to breathe while scooping. In through the nose, out through the mouth, as if fog could be warmed into weather. She said it keeps the hands steady, and steady hands make friendly doors for the light. People carried their pumpkins home and pretended the glow was for visitors, but many of them set the lantern where they could see it from the inside, and the house remembered how to be kind to its own rooms. Jonah watched the flames flutter behind the stranger's glass and saw, for a breath, his own reflection, taller somehow. The cat, deciding to adopt everyone, shared its warmth with his shins. "Not all doors open with keys," the stranger went on, "but some do. There's a locksmith on Cross Street who sells a strange sort of key. You choose it without knowing why, and later you find the door it fits. People think it's magic. He says it is practice. A person who carries a key tends to notice locks they used to walk past. He tells the ones who are disappointed that they picked the wrong key to carry it anyway. It often becomes right on the way to the door." The lantern made a small hissing sound, the sound a wick makes when it relaxes into its purpose. Jonah put his hand on one of the stones in his pocket and felt the cool, familiar shape lean toward the river in the telling, as if stories were a tide. By then the trick-or-treaters had begun to thin. A skeleton clacked by and waved, jolly as a xylophone. A witch offered the cat a bit of jerky and received a solemn oath in return. Windows softened to that honeyed glow that makes late October houses look like memories of themselves. "Shall we see where your feet wish to walk?" the stranger said. as if the choice had already been chosen. Jonah nodded, not sure at which moment the nod had begun. They followed the lantern through the fog, and the road uncurled in a way that made sense to feet. When they reached the small bridge over the drainage creek, Jonah found the post with the old soot mark on it. Someone had added a second mark beside it, and then a third, a shy constellation. Without thinking about it too much, which is often the best way to think, Jonah set one of his stones on the rail. It sat there, pale and particular. He kept the others. He was not a character in a tidy moral. He was a child who liked to have both hands full, and also liked the way the board felt under his palm when one hand was empty. The creek said something secret to the reeds and moved on. They walked again, and the lantern light touched fences, hedges, the face of a clock that had wandered from a shop long ago. Jonah noticed his breath doing what breath does when it remembers how. He noticed his shoulders had opinions of their own, and those opinions were changing to something kinder. At Elm Bend, they stopped where they had started. The stranger tilted the lantern to look at Jonah properly. "The night is a teacher that shows up right on time," they said in a tone that made the statement both obvious and profound. Already find their way. Jonah looked around as if to fix the scene in a jar. The cat, having completed its social rounds, curled in a coil on the fence and pretended to sleep. A gust of wind lifted a small drift of leaves and set them down as neatly as a letter returned to its envelope. "Will the light always be here?" asked Jonah, surprising himself. The stranger smiled the way pumpkins smile with their whole face. "The lantern goes where it is carried," they said. "Some people keep one by the door, some in a pocket you cannot see, some behind the eyes. It is a matter of where you expect to find it." The flame gave a courteous bow and dwindled, and in the moment after it went out, the darkness felt warmer than it had any right to feel. Jonah reached into his pocket and discovered his fingers had learned a new idea. They took hold of a different stone, one without a word on it, just a shape that suggested a path. And that was enough. The librarian closed the book and clicked off the lamp when she finished telling me all this. She said the tale was older than her knees and younger than her smile. I walked home through my own fog and noticed how streetlights made halos on the pavement, and how a person with an ordinary face can carry a very bright lantern if that is the sort of person they are becoming. Now, every Halloween since, I have noticed that the bend in the road is generous. Cats will adopt you if you stand still long enough. Bridges remember your hand. Keys in pockets grow more certain about doors. Pumpkins practice their breathing, and when houses turn their lamps on, the rooms glow from the inside out, which is a fine way for a house to learn it had always been a lantern, and for a person to learn the same. If a fragment of this settles in a corner of your evening, just let it settle. If something sets itself down, let it set itself down. The night will carry its own lessons to the place they fit best. Happy Halloween, everyone. And if you'd like help with your own story, until midnight tonight, my Halloween sale is still going on. Check out the link for more details before you miss out